She said it with her fork still in her mouth, twirled another bite of rigatoni like she hadn't just gutted the man who taught her to drive, waited at her hospital bed when she broke her wrist, and filled out every school field trip form since she was 8. "You're not even my real dad. I don't follow step-parent rules," she said, eyes still glued to her phone. I didn't drop the plate I was holding, though I wanted to. Didn't raise my voice. Didn't even blink. I just set the dish down, nodded once, and said, "Got it." My wife, her mother, froze mid-bite, like she wanted to say something but couldn't find words. That was the first silence. Not hers. Mine. To anyone else, it probably looked like just another teenage flare-up. Another bratty moment. A phase. But no, this wasn't a mood. This was a declaration. A formal boundary line drawn in the middle of my kitchen between the man who paid the bills and the girl who just revoked his position in her world. I spent 8 years pretending biology didn't matter. Woke up at 3 a.m. when she had the flu. Built her science project from scratch when her partner bailed. Argued with orthodontists. Sat through music recitals. And once drove 6 hours to retrieve her fencing bag she left behind before a tournament. I wasn't perfect, but I was there. Not because I had to be. Because I chose to be. And just like that, with a bite of pasta and a scroll of her Instagram feed, it was all invalidated. Let's be honest, this story won't be for everyone. Some will scoff. Some will say she's just a teen or grow a thicker skin. But if you're still here, chances are you get it. You know what it's like to pour into someone who keeps a lock on the door from the inside. And if that hits home, consider subscribing. Most people just listen without following. But it's that click that keeps our stories going and the team motivated to deliver more like this. After dinner, I cleared the plates in silence. She vanished upstairs. My wife lingered, doing that half-apologetic shuffle with the silverware, mumbling something about hormones and stress and social pressure. I didn't respond. I didn't argue. I didn't even sigh. I just rinsed the sink, wiped the counter, and went out to the garage. That's where the binder was. The one she never knew about. Not because I kept it secret, but because she never cared enough to ask. Inside were every receipt, every enrollment letter, every emailed confirmation for things she benefited from but never noticed. Fencing, summer music lab, that mentorship in the city, rent on her little student apartment 2 towns over, school tuition, all of it, managed, monitored, funded, and now subject to change. I didn't cancel anything. That would have made me look petty. I didn't delete my name from the billing forms. That would have been too loud. What I did was far simpler. I moved every payment from auto-pay to pending manual review. Then I opened a private spreadsheet I used only for trust expense logs. Every entry had its category: education, housing, enrichment. And at the bottom, I typed one new note. No obligations outside legal responsibility. She'd said I wasn't family. And now, I would honor that. Not with screaming. Not with slamming doors. But with quiet detachment. My wife didn't notice the change. Not then. That's the part no one tells you about. The scariest part of stepping back isn't the confrontation. It's how easy it is. How quickly things go quiet when you just stop. No yelling. No announcements. Just silence. I slept well that night. First time in weeks. Maybe months. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even hurt anymore. I was done pretending to hold a place I'd been quietly evicted from long ago. And I had the ledger to prove it. The click of the garage keypad was the only sound when I came back inside. My wife was already upstairs. Her footsteps moved once, probably checking if I'd turned off the kitchen light. Then silence. I slipped past the living room like a guest in my own home, opened my office door, and sat at the desk with the kind of stillness you only learn after decades of holding your tongue in rooms that didn't welcome your opinion. The screen lit up. Password. 2-step verification. Biometric prompt. The usual security layers. I wasn't just some guy tossing money around. I'd built systems for a living, understood how to protect information most people didn't even realize was valuable. And now, that same discipline applied here. The spreadsheet wasn't flashy, just columns and rows. But it held everything. Tuition for West Hollow Academy, $3, $8.50 due in 4 days. Rent for the campus-adjacent apartment I'd signed for because she said dorms were too noisy, $1,200 monthly. Then there was the summer mentorship through the Leadership Bridge Foundation, another $2,000 for the next installment. Fencing classes, $375. Music lab, $600 every 6 weeks. Rideshare passes, textbook rentals, health copay buffers. I stared at each line like I was seeing it for the first time. Not because I didn't remember, but because suddenly it all looked absurd. Every box I checked was invisible to the people it benefited. Invisible by design. I never wanted credit. I just wanted the family to function. And now? Now the system was too smooth. It was built for people who believed in continuity, trust, mutual effort. And the moment one side unplugged, the whole thing needed rebalancing. I didn't rage quit. I didn't delete anything. I simply opened each scheduled transaction and toggled it from auto pay on to manual review required. The software asked for a reason. I selected change in eligibility. Then, under notes, I typed something that felt like a resignation letter I'd never be allowed to submit aloud. No obligations outside legal responsibility. I sat back, looked at the line again, read it 3 times. It didn't feel like vengeance. It felt like clarity. For years, I'd blurred the line between what I chose to do and what I had to do. When you love someone else's kid, that line disappears fast. And when that same kid spits in your face, no, not physically, just verbally, which is worse somehow, you start to realize how far you let yourself drift into a role no one asked you to fill. She didn't want a stepdad. Okay, I could work with that. So I started making lists, not the angry kind, not the revenge kind, the kind that engineers make. Quiet system redesigns. Conditional logic. If relationship equals acknowledged, then financial flow equals maintain. Else, financial flow equals halt non-essentials. It wasn't personal. It was math. That night, I checked the trust account balance. Strong as ever. Years of careful planning. One column marked direct dependence. Another labeled discretionary. It used to feel good seeing her name under both. Now it felt like an error that needed correcting. There were folders in the file cabinet, hard copies of everything. I pulled one, labeled with her initials. A photo fell out, unintentional. It was from 3 years ago. She was beaming after her first regional fencing win. Mask under one arm, the other around my waist. I remembered that day. I remembered what she said right before the photo was taken. You're like my real dad, but cooler. And then I remembered tonight. I slid the photo back into the folder without a word and closed the drawer. From now on, the ledger would tell the truth. Not the emotions. Not the wishes. Just the numbers. And the numbers were no longer blind. It's almost impressive how easily people convince themselves peace has returned when it hasn't. My wife started humming again in the mornings, little coffee-sipping hums, like the soundtrack of a sitcom kitchen. She thought everything had passed, like a brief thunderstorm over a sturdy roof. No leaks, no mess. Just some emotional weather. It was just a teenage moment, she said one night while folding towels, like it was laundry we were discussing, not a complete dismissal of the man raising her daughter. You can't take it personally. I didn't argue. I didn't remind her that teenage moments don't usually come with budgetary consequences or long-term fallout. I didn't bring up how fast her daughter had gone from asking for help with chemistry to barely acknowledging my existence. I just nodded, took my towel, and walked out of the room like a man whose only job was drying his hands, not holding up half a household. That became my rhythm. Less talk, more nods. I still made dinner, still fixed the Wi-Fi, still restocked the fridge with the oat milk no one but her daughter drank. But I stopped filling the silence with suggestions or praise or effort. I became a quiet passenger in a house I used to pilot. She didn't notice the difference. Not yet. Her daughter certainly didn't. She walked through the house like a part-time tenant. One AirPod always in, one eye always rolling. I once heard her mutter, "God, he's always hovering," under her breath when I passed the hallway. I was carrying a vacuum for the mess she left. But okay, I got the memo. What they didn't see was what was happening behind the scenes. Not vengeance, not sabotage, just recalibration. I called the fencing instructor, told him we'd be pausing for a bit. He didn't ask why. I didn't explain. The mentorship program? I marked her spot as pending withdrawal. The administrator was polite, sympathetic, said, sometimes it's just not the right season for growth. I almost laughed. Not out loud. Just in that bitter way you do when someone nails the truth without knowing it. At dinner, I let them talk. My wife chatted about a new project at work. Her daughter gave one-word answers about school, thumbs still flying on her phone. I passed the peas, nodded at the appropriate times, took a sip of water. That was my role now, the silent provider, the utility. See, my wife said after her daughter left the table. She's being civil again. I told you it would blow over. I smiled. A small, tired one. You were right. She kissed my cheek like it meant something and went upstairs. She didn't know I had already rescheduled the trust's quarterly review with my advisor. Moved it up. I'd be taking more direct control, removing certain authorizations, reviewing where the discretionary lines had blurred. Not cutting anyone off, just redefining terms. There was a weight in my chest, yes, but it wasn't anger anymore. It was closer to resignation. You don't hate the branch for snapping. You just stop putting your weight on it. They'd built a version of me that was useful when it suited them. A wallet, a chauffeur, a tutor, a ghost in the machine. But a real father? That title had an expiration date I was never informed of. And now that I was past it, they assumed I'd just stay plugged in, funding their lives with no seat at the table. So I let them think that. Let my wife believe her little moment theory held water. Let the girl believe her snide line had vanished into the air like smoke. But what she didn't understand, what neither of them understood, was that I wasn't waiting for an apology. I was letting the system reach its logical end. Quietly, precisely, like a man watching dominoes fall in slow motion. Once he didn't push, but simply stopped holding up. Exactly 32 days later, the scaffolding cracked. Not in some theatrical explosion, no. Just small fractures that appeared simultaneously. Each one silent, mechanical, merciless. The first call came at 8:14 a.m., just as I was finishing my coffee. It was from West Hollow's bursar office, though I didn't pick up. I let it roll to voicemail, and seconds later their message popped up in my inbox. Mr. Carson, we're following up regarding the failed tuition payment for Madison. As of this morning, her enrollment status is at risk. Please contact us immediately to resolve. No, thank you for your continued support. No warmth, just cold institutional concern. I sipped my coffee. At 8:42 a.m., her landlord called. Different tone. Young guy, sounded more nervous than assertive. Hi. This is Jeremy from Pineside Rentals. I just wanted to check in. Madison's rent for this month didn't go through. The auto payment bounced, and the backup card declined. I tried calling her too, but yeah, let me know how you'd like to handle it. I didn't return the call. At 9:16 a.m., the music lab emailed. Subject, final notice, unpaid balance. Body, dear guardian, as of today, the account for Madison Carson has an unpaid balance of $600. Continued non-payment will result in removal from the advanced composition cohort. They attached a PDF. Clean. Professional. Detached. At 10:07, her rideshare account flagged my phone. Parent link card declined for scheduled commute pass renewal. That one made me laugh. Not out loud. Just the kind of breathless exhale that tastes like justice. It wasn't even vindictive. It was just the system functioning as designed. At 10:31, my phone rang again. Her number this time. The screen lit up, Maddie's cell. I watched it until it stopped ringing. A few minutes later, another call, my wife. I didn't answer hers either. Then the texts began. Maddie, hey. Maddie, I think something's wrong. The tuition? Maddie, did the school call you? Maddie, hello? Then silence. Then, Maddie, okay. What's going on, but like, the apartment PPL are saying I didn't pay? Maddie, are we hacked or something? Maddie, can you please call me? Can you please call me? She hadn't said a single civil thing to me in weeks. Not one sentence that didn't involve condescension or complaint. But now that the safety net was unraveling, now I was useful again. I turned my phone face down. I wasn't being cruel. I was being consistent. I had simply stopped participating in a fiction where I was needed only for logistics, not existence. Later that day, my wife called again. Voicemail this time. Her voice was tight, like she was trying not to sound alarmed. Hey, can you call me when you get a second? I think something's up with Maddie's accounts. She's panicking, and honestly, I don't understand what's going on. Maybe it's a bank thing? I'll text you. She didn't know. Not yet. But I did. I had watched this machine operate for years, quietly feeding money into a structure that no one bothered to acknowledge until it stopped working. And now, the structure was doing what any system does when its parameters shift. It was failing. Precisely. Elegantly. Thoroughly. No tantrums. No declarations. Just quiet malfunction. From her perspective, the world had glitched. 1 minute, everything worked. The next, access denied. Doors she thought were automatic were now locked. Cards declined. Messages ignored. And for the first time in years, there was no one rushing in with a fix. She didn't understand what was happening yet. But she would. Because panic isn't loud at first. It starts with questions. Then doubt. Then the slow realization that you are not as untouchable as you believed. And Madison Carson was about to learn all three. The call came just after noon. I was in the backyard, pruning the hedge that always leaned too far into the neighbor's side. Gloves on, clippers in hand, the sun sharp and quiet, like the kind of day you'd never associate with confrontation. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I checked the screen. Karen Sell. I answered. Hey. Her voice was already tight. Too upbeat. Too performative. Hi. Okay, so, I'm at the school. She gave a shaky laugh, the kind you use when you want to believe everything's fixable. They said Maddie's tuition didn't go through. Not just late. Like, totally declined. And then the landlord called. And the music program sent something weird. Are we in trouble? Did something happen with the bank? I mean, are we okay? I let her finish. Let her stack her panic like a house of cards. Then I said, calmly, no trouble at all. Everything's fine. Silence. Then I added, like I was explaining a recipe. She told me I wasn't family. And I've respected that. Another silence. This one thicker. What? She said I'm not her dad. That I don't get a say. So, I've stopped participating where I'm not welcome. She's 16, Karen hissed, now officially panicking. You're seriously doing this because of one bratty comment. Doing what? I asked. Punishing her. I took off my glove. Wiped a bit of sweat from my temple. No. I'm honoring her boundaries. You're being ridiculous, she snapped. And you're being reactive, I said flat. She wanted a separation. I've just clarified what that means. She's a kid. She's old enough to apply for grants, hold a debit card, operate her own social media empire, and tell me I'm not her father. But not old enough to understand what that means. Karen's voice dropped to a whisper, like she didn't want someone in the parking lot to hear her unravel. This is extreme. You can't just pull everything. She needs that mentorship, that housing. You know how hard she's worked. I cut her off. And none of that was revoked. It was paused. Conditional on our relationship. I haven't shut anything down. I've just stopped assuming I have a role. She went quiet again. And that silence? That was the moment she realized this wasn't a tantrum. This wasn't sulking. This wasn't a man in a midlife identity spiral making dramatic gestures. This was infrastructure collapse. One built quietly, sustained dutifully, and withdrawn without warning. Because she never asked who was holding it up in the first place. Karen, I said after a beat. I didn't ask for credit. I didn't demand gratitude. I gave her a life she didn't have to think about. And the moment she decided I was just an accessory, well, accessories can be removed. I could hear her breathing. That short, fluttery panic that happens when someone realizes they've been living inside someone else's stability without understanding its source. You can't mean this. I do. She's your daughter. No, she's your daughter. And I was the man who loved her like mine. Until she asked me not to. There was no screaming. No threats. Just a steel door closing slowly behind every word I spoke. And then, in a much smaller voice, Karen said, "What do we do now? You talk to her. And you ask her if she meant it. She didn't. Then let her say it. Not to you. To me." She hung up without another word. And I went back to trimming the hedge. Clippers clean. Hands steady. No rush. Because I knew they'd be back. But next time, they'd come with fewer assumptions. And fewer guarantees. The doorbell rang just after 9. Not a casual hour. Not a social call. That time of night. A doorbell means trouble, and we all know it. I didn't rush. I dried my hands slowly, folded the kitchen towel neatly, and walked to the door like a man already sure of what he'd see. There they were. Karen, arms folded but face anxious. And Maddie, hood up, face down, standing half a step behind her like a defendant reluctantly dragged into court. Neither of them spoke at first. I didn't invite them in. Just stood there in the frame, letting the porch light do what it does. Highlight every awkward angle, every nervous shuffle. Karen broke first. She didn't mean it like that, she said, tone almost rehearsed. She was upset. Kids say stupid things. You know that. Maddie didn't look up. She kept picking at her hoodie sleeve like it was going to unravel and take the whole night with it. I nodded once. Come in. They stepped inside. Karen led the way. Maddie drifted behind her like she was tethered by obligation, not choice. They sat in the living room. Karen on the edge of the couch, Maddie in the far corner, knees drawn in. I took the chair across from them and waited. No one touched the throw pillows. No one looked comfortable. She's been crying all day, Karen started. She didn't understand everything that would happen. You pulled everything, and she's scared. She thought I was bluffing. I said calmly. Karen stiffened. She didn't say that. She didn't have to. I turned to Maddie then. Is that true? She looked up briefly, just enough to meet my eyes, then dropped them again. I don't know, she mumbled. That's honest, I said. More than I've gotten in a while. Karen tried again. Can we just rewind this? Sit down like a family and work through it. I let that sit for a beat, then asked, Am I family? She looked thrown. What? It's not a rhetorical question. Am I family? Because if I am, We can have that conversation. But if I'm just someone who lives here and pays for things, then we should establish that. It changes the nature of the contract. Maddie flinched at the word contract. Karen whispered, "Don't do this. Don't make it legal." "I'm not angry," I said. "You need to understand that. I'm not slamming doors or giving ultimatums. But I'm also not running an invisible welfare state for people who don't consider me part of their tribe." Maddie's voice cracked. "I didn't mean it like that." "Then what did you mean?" I asked gently. She didn't answer, just twisted her hoodie string tighter and stared at her knees. I turned back to Karen. "You've always wanted to believe love should come without expectations. That parenting should be unconditional. And you're right, to a point. But that only works when there's acknowledgement. When the relationship is mutual. This wasn't." Karen looked like she wanted to argue, but she didn't. I continued, softer now. "You don't get to disown someone emotionally and still expect their support logistically. Either I'm in this family or I'm not." Karen swallowed hard. "You are." Maddie spoke then, barely audible. "I was just mad. I didn't think you'd." "Do what?" I finished for her. "Actually stop," she whispered. I exhaled, not in frustration, just tired clarity. "That's the problem," I said. "You didn't think." Silence again. Heavy. Thick. Karen reached for Maddie's hand, but Maddie pulled it away, embarrassed. She wasn't ready to share that vulnerability yet. Not in front of me. Maybe not at all. "I didn't come to shame either of you," I said. "I just finally took your words seriously." I stood up. Karen followed suit, desperate. "So what now?" "I'll continue what I'm legally obligated to," I said. "But anything beyond that, it's a two-way street. And right now it's blocked." I walked them to the door. No hugs. No dramatic farewells. Just a quiet click as it shut behind them. In the distance, I heard their car door slam. In the silence that followed, I felt something strange. Not anger. Not sadness. Relief. Because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't pretending anymore. There's something uniquely hollow about an apology that ends in a request. Like someone handing you a glass of water while asking you to carry their suitcase. You can't tell if the kindness is the point or just the currency. The next morning, just before 7, I heard the soft shhfd of paper sliding under my office door. I didn't get up right away. I knew exactly what it was. I waited. Let the silence linger. No footsteps retreating down the hall. Just the note sitting on the floor like it came from a ghost. Eventually, I got up, walked over, and picked it up. She had used the notepad from the kitchen, the one with the cartoon dog in a chef's hat. The ink was smudged, like she'd pressed too hard or written too fast. I was mad. I didn't mean it. "I'm sorry." Clean. Efficient. No embellishment. But then, "Can you fix the payments?" I stared at that last line longer than the rest. It sat there like a loose thread tugging the whole thing apart. Not, "I understand now." Not, "I want to talk." Not, "What can I do to repair this?" Just, "Can you fix it?" I sat down, pulled a blank sheet of paper from the printer tray, and wrote one word in the center with the same pen. "No." I folded it cleanly and slid it back under the door of her room without a word. No knock. No hesitation. Just return to sender. There was no explosion. No dramatic hallway confrontation. Just silence. I imagined she read it while still in bed. Maybe she expected more. Maybe she thought there'd be a lecture or a lesson. Instead, she got an answer. One word. A boundary reinforced in black ink. Later that morning, I heard her in the kitchen, shuffling things around, being louder than usual, like sound could fill the new vacuum in her world. She poured coffee she wouldn't drink. Slammed the fridge a little harder. Opened cabinets without taking anything. Karen had already left for work, her version of fixing things being distance and hoping it sorted itself out by dinner time. At exactly 10:11 a.m., I got an email from the Fencing Academy. Subject: Withdrawal confirmed, Madison Carson. Body: Thank you for notifying us. We've processed the withdrawal and will release her spot to the next student on the list. Please let us know if you'd like to resume in the future. It was done. Another thread snipped. She didn't knock on my door again that day. Didn't try another note. But I could feel it. Something in her was shifting. Not toward rebellion. Not yet remorse either. Something in between. A slow realization that the safety net wasn't elastic. That not all bridges were built to hold infinite weight. Around noon, I passed by her room on my way to the mailbox. The door was open just a crack. Inside, I saw her sitting at her desk, headphones in, laptop open, but her eyes weren't on the screen. They were fixed on the wall in front of her, wide and blank. She looked like someone watching the replay of their own mistake, frame by frame, unable to stop it. I said nothing, just walked past, because I knew something she didn't yet. There is a kind of apology that restores trust. And there is the other kind, the one that's just noise around a favor. And once you've spent years giving without asking, without counting, without expecting anything back, when that favor finally is asked, it better come clean. Otherwise, sorry is just a sales pitch. And I wasn't buying. By Wednesday, the note under the door was yesterday's news. No follow-up. No second attempt. No sudden tearful confession or TV-style "let's talk" moment. Just avoidance, the usual headphone shell, and one-word answers at dinner. If there was any shock left in her, it had settled into a quiet dread, a kind of slow-sinking understanding. This wasn't a stunt. That morning, I called Marcus. Marcus is the trust manager I've worked with for years, longer than I've even known Karen. We met back when I sold the analytics firm and needed to turn volatility into long-term security. He's calm, precise, and has a better sense of emotional boundaries than most therapists. "Hey, Jack," he answered. "Got your message. Everything all right?" I didn't say much. Just, "We need to revise the disbursement permissions." There was a pause. Not hesitation, just processing. "All right," he said. "Walk me through it." We went line by line. Every item flagged as discretionary. Every payout to programs, clubs, services. The housing stipend for the student apartment. The card authorization for transportation. Education-related extras that weren't legally mandated. Everything that made her teenage world feel comfortably padded. "All discretionary payments," I said, "are to be halted unless there's a legal obligation, medical, judicial, insurance coverage. She'll get birthday gifts. She'll have access to coverage. But beyond that, pause everything." He didn't ask why. "That's why I keep Marcus. It'll take about 2 business days to process fully," he said. "Some billing cycles are midstream." "That's fine." We hung up. The irony, of course, is that nothing changed on my end. The trust is still intact, still growing, still functional. I didn't slash or burn or rage delete her name. I just turned off the faucet. The pipeline remained, but now with valves she doesn't have access to. By Thursday, the summer program sent an automated withdrawal confirmation. Subject: program access canceled, leadership mentorship cohort. The email had a chipper tone, standardized for people who changed their plans. She hadn't changed anything. I had. The school followed next. A final call from the head administrator. Polite. Concerned. "We've extended grace periods before, Mr. Carson, but, unfortunately, it's policy. Without payment by Friday, we'll have to initiate withdrawal procedures. Do you want to reconsider?" "No," I said. "We're following a new structure at home." She sighed. "I'm sorry to hear that." "So am I." Karen tried the mother as diplomat approach for 2 days straight. She came into my office on Friday, laptop in hand, with spreadsheets open like she'd just discovered budgeting for the first time. "Can we just move the fencing class to quarterly?" she asked. "Or keep the mentorship and drop the apartment? We can compromise. She needs structure." "You've always said that." I leaned back in my chair. She had structure. She chose disassociation. Karen's voice was tight. "But she's 16. So was I when I got my first job." She doesn't understand what she said. She didn't stutter when she said it. "You're going to derail her whole future to make a point?" I looked at her then. Really looked. "No," I said. "I'm just finally making sure my investment matches my involvement." She made her rules. I'm just following them. She didn't argue after that. Just stood there for a moment, long enough to look like she might cry, then walked out, softly closing the door behind her. I turned back to the screen and finished the budget revision. It wasn't punishment. It was policy. The fallout didn't arrive with fireworks. It came like rust, slow, silent, and irreversible. It started with a polite email from her English teacher. Subject: Madison's withdrawal. Body: Mr. Carson, we were surprised to hear about Madison's exit from West Hollow. She's been a bright spot in our program, and we're truly sorry to lose her. If there's anything we can do, please don't hesitate to reach out. Wishing you and your family the best. I didn't reply. What was there to say? Yes. Thank you. But her definition of family didn't include me. So unfortunately, the financial scaffolding collapsed under the weight of her own dismissal. Not exactly the kind of thing you can explain in a school newsletter. A few hours later, a voicemail from the mentorship director. "Hi, this is Sheila from the Leadership Bridge program. Just wanted to say, we were really rooting for Madison. Her essays were exceptional. We know sometimes life throws curveballs, but, well, if there's a change of heart, our doors are open. We hold spots on a case-by-case basis for promising students." I didn't return that call either. By the end of the week, word had spread further than she expected. Her fencing coach reached out to Karen directly. The woman was tactful, but you could hear the concern beneath the script. Is everything all right? Madison was just beginning to hit her stride. Then came the awkward text from her peers. Jules, hey girl, what happened? Why'd you drop everything? Amy, wait, you're leaving? Why didn't you tell anyone? Rachel, I thought your stepdad paid for all your stuff? No reply from Maddie. Seen. Not answered. But the silence wasn't invisible. These kids grew up watching each other's lives in real time. Online. Text threads. Group chats. Social currency. And now? Now she was cashing in shame. She tried controlling the story, of course. At first, it was, we're moving. Then, family emergency. One classmate said she told them her dad got sick and couldn't work anymore. That one spread fast. Sympathy points. Until Karen showed up at the local bookstore, still working, still wearing her usual smile. A student's parent spotted her and casually asked, I thought you were relocating? The lies began to fray. One kid heard from another that Madison had been pulled from her program because of money stuff. Wait, what? But her stepdad's loaded, someone said. Another girl chimed in. She always said he took care of everything. Flights, fees, even Uber credits. What happened? By Monday, Maddie was walking the halls of our house like a ghost. The phone stayed in her hand, but she wasn't typing anymore. Just scrolling, probably rereading texts she didn't know how to answer. Karen tried comforting her. I heard the attempts, soft knocks on her door, hushed reassurances, the occasional he'll come around. But I didn't, because this wasn't about her comfort anymore. It was about cause and effect. For years, I was her invisible engine. Silent, dependable, background noise that powered every opportunity she had. And the moment she declared I wasn't part of her identity, I stopped fueling the illusion. It wasn't revenge. It was reflection. And now, she was trapped inside the mirror she built. There were no screaming matches. No public blowouts. Just quiet questions spreading through her social circles like smoke under a door. And every unanswered message was a spark waiting to catch. It was a Tuesday. Cloudless. The kind of day when the light slices through the windows in clean angles, making everything look more honest than it should. The house was quiet. Karen was at work, and I had told Maddie I'd be out all afternoon. I lied. Instead, I sat with the notary at the dining room table, the same table where we once celebrated her 13th birthday with balloons, streamers, and a cake shaped like a violin. Now it held only a stack of legal documents and a thick manila folder with my initials on the tab. The notary was polite, efficient, and said almost nothing. She stamped, flipped, signed, and witnessed. We reviewed the language in the trust. Clauses that had once specified discretionary support for family members living in the household were now amended to redirect that future allocation. A new beneficiary. The foundation I'd been quietly supporting for years, one that helped kids age out of foster care without support, would receive the portion previously earmarked for Maddie's enrichment. Structured grants, education stipends, medical resources. The irony was obvious, even poetic. If I wasn't real family, then perhaps it was time to support those who didn't even have the luxury of rejecting one. When the notary left, I cleaned up the papers, sealed the documents in a courier envelope, and placed them in my briefcase. And then, without ceremony, I walked into the hall closet, pulled down an old plastic photo box, and sorted through 8 years of frozen smiles. I found the one I needed. Maddie, 10 years old. Post-tournament glow, sweaty hair tucked behind her ears, beaming into the camera while she hugged me, foil in one hand, fencing mask under her arm. Her grip on my waist in that photo was ironclad. Pure pride. The kind of affection that doesn't know how to lie yet. I photocopied it. Not the original. Just a scan. Black and white. Slightly pixelated. Then I wrote one line on a yellow sticky note and pressed it gently beneath the image. You called me not real. I finally listened. No signature. No salutation. Just that. I placed it inside a plain white envelope, sealed it, and set it on the kitchen counter. Then I left. She came home that afternoon earlier than usual. The slam of the door, the rustle of her backpack being dropped onto the floor, the familiar squeak of her socked feet on the tile. None of it startled me. I was in the guest room, repacking files, leaving her space. It was only when the house went still again that I knew she'd seen it. From the hallway, I heard the tear of paper. Then silence. Then the quietest sound a house can hold. Someone trying not to cry out loud. Not sobbing. Not dramatic. Just the low, hitching breaths of a girl who realized something irreversible had happened, and that it didn't come with a speech or an open door. I didn't walk in. Didn't say a word. Because this wasn't a moment for repair. It was acknowledgement. For years, I gave her a place in my life she never had to earn, never had to question. And the one time she did, she used it to cut me out with surgical precision. Because teenagers don't think words stick. But they do. They grow roots. And sometimes, they bloom into silence. Later that evening, Karen came home. She didn't say much when she saw the envelope on the counter. Just glanced at it. Then at me. Then at Maddie's closed door. Something in her posture changed, but she didn't ask. Maybe she finally understood. I finished my final entry in the trust ledger that night. Dated. Signed. Done. No revenge. No bitterness. Just a man realigning the future around the truth. You can't give endlessly to someone who only sees you when the giving stops. Some foundations crack. Others get repurposed. And this one, it would still support a child. Just not the one who asked me not to.